Dinosaur, written by Stephen Llewelyn and performed by Chris Barrie. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell to keep up to date with the latest installments.
The monsters may have been keeping their distance, but the gods were listening. A deafening crack and boom rolled across the plain and forest. Tim ducked in surprise, seeing Henry do likewise. They turned around sharply to see vast, blacker-than-black clouds amassing behind them. While their focus had been fixed on the sweeping vista to the west, a storm front had rolled in from the baby Atlantic 50 miles east. It drove inland towards them with almost supernatural speed. Bang! Lightning struck the new world. The Leviathan just sat there and took it stolidly, as the super-high voltage worked its way down her flanks harmlessly into the ground. "Any second now it's going to—" Tim may as well have mimed the rest of his comment. The rain did not start so much as it just happened. There was nothing, and then there was deluge, enveloping them like liquid shrink-wrap. The water, it could hardly be called rain, bounced off the young man's body armour with the sound and thrash intensity of a blast beat. Tim turned to Henry, streams shelving off his helmet and shoulder pads. "You know, the next time you want to ask me something," he cried above the sudden accompanying wind. "Yeah?" "Don't!" Natalie knelt in the pit at Fossil Rock, studying the two fossilized skeletons partially revealed at the center of the excavation. The diggers were barely amateur archaeologists, but regardless, the whole team had shown the utmost respect for the remains from the beginning. Now their identities were known, there was a real sense of reverence as the finds from the former NASA officers were handled and cleaned. It was like laying out family. They were down to the second skull, but there remained much stone still to clear around the female. The work demanded great care, and to fully expose her, without damage, would certainly take more time than they had today. Her? Natalie thought. When did that happen? Yesterday. These remains were just a collection of bone-shaped stones, mere representations of lives long extinguished. Now, they not only had noun, but personal pronoun and even proper noun. Added to that, when the New World left home, a little over a fortnight ago, these people were alive and well and safely on base at Canaveral. Natalie wiped her brow, taking a moment to consider. And now they're 20 million years dead? Leaving aside that they died 120 million years before either of them were born for a moment, how do we even begin to work through that intellectually, let alone spiritually? She sighed, deciding it might be best to record what they had at this stage. Hopefully, viewing the excavation with a more empirical eye might help us shrug off some of the insanity which seemed to have become their lives, at least for a little while. Besides, if they continued down, they might run out of time. Before she could say as much to her digmate, communication became almost impossible. The explosive white noise was immediate and deafening, but seemed to roll in and out to even greater severity. Everyone reacted by covering their ears involuntarily as they watched the light outside fall black as night. The trees, bent double by the sudden violence of the storm, began to shed almost at once, bombarding the dig tent with frightening force. Natalie climbed out of her trench and walked across to the Sarge. Comforted by his silent unflappability, she yelled, "Where the hell did that come from?" above the din. "I don't know," he bellowed back. "But I hope it doesn't stay over us." "I know! It's killing my ears!" she shouted, still covering them. Jackson shook his head and pointed up. "They won't be able to fly in this. We're stuck here until this blows over." "Oh, crap!" she cursed, a comparative whisper when compared with the roar outside. Douglas decided against visiting Fossil Rock with the others that morning, choosing instead to meet with Lloyd. Delivering the news of bereavement to family and loved ones was every commanding officer's worst nightmare. He had done his best, but the situation with Lloyd added another layer of complex discomfiture. Lloyd had taken it quietly enough for his own part. Of course, it was hard to know how bad it was underneath. He left the brig with a sigh of relief and set off for the bridge, barely travelling 3 steps before his comm sounded. "Douglas," he answered. "Captain, it's Jill. We've been hit by an enormous weather front. No warning, just blat." "We have got to get that satellite up," Douglas remonstrated aloud. "Yes, sir, but the immediate issue is we can't go out or fly. This is a big one." "Are the construction crews back in?" "Yes, Captain. Wet, cold, and thoroughly disgruntled, but they're fine." "And the kids? Are they back inside?" "Affirmative." "Surely Sandeep's back with the shuttle by now." "Yes, he's been back a while." "Is there a but or a however about to break into this conversation, Commander?" "Yes, sir. It's the dig team. We're not sure when we'll be able to reach them in this." "Ah, crap." Douglas strode onto his bridge. "So, what do we have?" he asked directly. "A storm from hell," replied Baines. "And it's getting worse, Captain," Singh added. "Hurricane force winds on the way." "Oh, surely it's just April showers," said Douglas. "These squalls always caught you by surprise, even back home." "We've got 150 mile-an-hour gusts," Singh reported. "Bit rougher than bonny Scotland, Captain." "Oh, I don't know. It gets pretty fierce up in the Highlands, laddie." "The compound is beginning to flood too," continued Singh, "which will make it difficult to go out at ground level until it subsides. Not without flooding the pod cargo bay, anyway." "Oh," Baines commented quietly. Both men turned to look at her. "Jill?" asked Douglas. Of course you know our water stocks are finite, Captain." Baines sidled adroitly up to the bombshell she was about to drop. "That's why we chose this clearing, because of its proximity to the river, yes?" The men waited for more, completely unwilling to help her out. "Well?" She tried again. "I was speaking with Satnam Patel about a way of refreshing our supplies. Obviously, building a pipeline from the river is out of the question at the moment. So, we came up with the idea of taking one of the shipping containers we have down in the cargo hold, welding the doors shut and reinforcing them. They're already made to fit on our lorries, so transport to the river and back should be no problem. Satnam had some welders cut the top off the container, using the steel to build baffles along its length to prevent the buildup of wave pressure along the tank. Apparently, this might destabilize the truck or even turn it over. The baffles were fitted, leaving spaces at the top and bottom so that the tank can still be filled and drained easily." Douglas waited patiently for his first officer to finish, sighing heavily as he put his head in his hands. "That was a hell of a story, Jill. Now why don't we skip to the crappy ending?" he asked. "Captain?" she ventured innocently. "Oh, aye," confirmed Douglas. "I've developed a nose for these things. Let's have it." "I know we don't have many lorries," Baines soldiered on, "but I thought, a bit of rain couldn't hurt, could it?" "What have you done?" "I ordered them to drive the new water tank outside to catch some rainwater. Naturally, it made sense to leave it on the lorry for ease of moving it later," she trailed off. "Can we bring it back in?" Douglas asked Singh. Singh shook his head. "This flash flood is like nothing I've ever seen, sir, even in the Indian monsoon season. Unfortunately, the new compound is rather keeping the water in too. It's probably up to the wheel arches by now. The river's up over its banks, you see, so it's likely to get worse. And quickly." He turned to face his superiors. "The groundworks and palisade were constructed with extraordinary speed out of a necessity to keep the wildlife out. I don't think we can blame anyone for leaving drainage for another day." "No, we can't blame those hard-working boys," said Douglas. "But what about our wee lorry out there?" "All I can say is it hasn't floated off yet, sir," Singh reported, calling up a feed from one of the external cams. "Are we going to lose it, Sandy?" Baines asked, looking slightly green in the gills. The pilot checked his instruments. "It's been raining for an hour, Commander. If it continues overnight, the truck will be underwater. The weight of the water tank on its back should keep it in place as it fills. But, as for the electrics—" "Wait a minute," Aren't the trucks airtight and subsequently watertight? Asked Douglas. They were built for Mars, after all. Aren't they basically spaceships without flight capability? Yes, sir, but only their cabins and crew spaces are spaceships, as you say. The rest of the vehicle is basically just a lorry. It's insulated against extreme cold, and the workings are protected for heavy duty, but that's all. Although we were affecting weather changes on Mars, flooding wasn't a projected issue for some years, possibly not even within the expected working life of these vehicles. I mean, they're okay in the rain, but... He looked at Baines apologetically. Neither our technicians who adapted the vehicles, nor the original builders, anticipated anyone taking them in any amphibious maneuvers. And the levels are too high to open the pod hatch, even if we're quick? Asked Douglas. If we opened the outer airlock, it would flood to at least a meter depth. I could check with Hero or Sam Burton, but I'd be concerned about how the electronics would... Singh stalled, interrupted by a massive rending grumble as the ship lurched. The movement was momentary, but a slight pitch on the floor could now be felt. "What the hell was that?" cried Douglas, hanging onto the back of his chair in case it came again. "Oh my God, we're sinking," Baines called out, checking her instrument panel. "Captain," Singh spoke as calmly as he could manage, "I'm afraid I'm going to have to recommend against opening any of the hatches just at the moment." "We're going to drown!" Thomas Beckett shouted over the deafening roar of torrential rain and constant ballistic barrage. As the ground outside became oversaturated, rivulets of water began to run under the sides of the dig tent. "Don't be silly, Thomas," Natalie called back. "We're on top of a cliff. There's no immediate danger to us." "Life is less than peaches for us, though, missus," one of the diggers yelled out from the trench. So I see," she was forced to acknowledge. "Can we use the industrial vacuum cleaner to pump it out?" "Eh?" "I said, can we use the industrial vacuum cleaner to pump it out?" Natalie shouted. The man cupped his hands, calling back in a broad Australian accent. "I don't know if it's a wet and dry machine. Mars is mostly bone dry on the surface, so I doubt it made the specifier's wish list." "You don't have the manual with you?" she asked hopefully. The Australian gave her a look and climbed out of the trench. "Did I bring the instructions for a vacuum cleaner on an archaeological dig 100 million years ago?" She smiled apologetically. "I'm guessing not," she called into his ear. "Right," he said. "That hole's full of dirt, grit, sand and water. It'd be like supping pommy lager. You really think it's worth carking the machine for? It's not like the Sheila's gonna drown, is it?" "Good point," Natalie conceded. "Well, apart from the lager, obviously." She turned to take in the whole team. "Buckets!" she bawled. One of the crew grabbed a battery-powered breaker, smashing a small culvert into the rock at the edge of the tent to fashion a rough chute. The rest of the diggers set about throwing the water, bucket at a time, through the new hole to make its way down the rock face outside. The chain was hard at it when a wrenching, tearing sound cut straight through the white noise of the rain, vibrating their tympanic membranes at the precise frequency of fear. The bailing stopped immediately, as the team searched one another's faces for a scrap of comfort. "Grab the bloody tent!" bellowed the Sarge, Barrow Boy genetics storming to the fore with uncouth but undeniable practicality. Everyone leapt for a handhold on the steel framework which gave the polymerized structure its rigidity. One of the 18 steel split pins driven into the earth and stone with a handheld hydraulic hammer just yesterday had ripped free, and others were developing a disconcerting wobble. The dig tent weighed over a ton, but was so big that it was like trying to pin down a sail. "Can we tie it off to a tree?" shouted someone. "Open that hatch and we're all gone, over the edge!" The Sarge roared above the increased wind noise as the edge of the tent began to lift. "Everyone get over here! The wind is coming from this direction! Move it!" The diggers and soldiers pounced as one, all grabbing a piece of the side as it began to rise. They managed to balance the force of the hurricane winds, barely. Only Beckett stayed where he was, looking shocked by the events unfolding around him. The Sarge noticed and felt obliged to speak out.
"Get over here, Beckett, before I get over there, you pillock!"
Beckett snapped out of his trance, moving to stand at the opposite end of the group from Sergeant Jackson, but he added his weight nonetheless. They were essentially trapped inside a giant vibrating shuttlecock. The noise and the buffeting were terrifying. The 14 human beings had no more control over their destiny than a paper boat in a rip current, so they dug in and grabbed the dig tent like their lives depended on it, because their lives depended on it. Beckett was on the cusp of panic. His only conscious thought,
"It's bad enough being lost in a world in which I don't belong, but being lost over a cliff in a world in which I don't belong would just be the limit. I should never have left my library."
They hung on, they held fast to the tent, to each other, to life. "Do you think they'll come for us?" shouted Natalie, hope taking flight.
"I hope not,"
The Sarge shot it down.
"If they do, it won't help us, and it certainly won't help them. We've got to ride it out."
There was a bang, and a buck, and a bang. The dig tent lifted, tearing many of the steel pins out at once.
"Let it go!"
The Sarge bellowed.
"Let it go!"
He dropped to the ground, hoping the others had heard him. Any hopes of their protective enclosure staying earthbound were torn away as the whole structure was snatched into the air. An instant of relative high pressure under the tent allowed the team to hit the ground and stay there as their world flew apart. Once raised, the dig tent began turning over, allowing the full force of the hurricane to reach beneath. In a blink, it took off as if fired from a gun, ripping through the trees at the edge of the cliff, collecting others as it flew. The Sarge fell on his back, watching in wide-eyed horror as the 12-metre-long structure shot down the valley at incredible speed.
"Crawl for the trees! Crawl for the trees!"
He roared above the storm and the rain. He grabbed Natalie by the straps on her denim work dungarees, dragging her after him. Miraculously, everyone made it to the tree line, despite being drenched, breathless, and terrified. This was fortunate, but the trees themselves were also under attack from the winds. Stooped over, some cracked, while others lost limbs alarmingly. The refugees from the dig clung desperately onto the trunks and to each other. Now fully in the clutches of the hurricane, they prayed for it all to stop. Climbing up and down ladders for things one has forgotten is always tiresome. In order to save time, Hero extended just past his comfortable reach. The ship lurched at that moment, tipping him over the edge and down the access tube. He was wedged tight in the small maintenance shaft, having banged his head off the wall on the way down. He tried to move, but his clothing had snagged a socket driver in the fall, jamming it into some switchgear. Hearing a subtle scraping noise from above, he twisted to look up, and was just in time to see the handheld terminal he had left at the rim of the hatch fall towards him, also striking his head. Giorgio fared a little better. Nevertheless, the movement had thrown him off balance so that he bumped his hip hard against a console near his workstation. He looked around for his colleague to express his natural outrage, but only saw a pair of legs kicking and struggling from the top of an access hatch, the one his friend had so lately been peering down. What he heard were muffled words, mostly unprintable ones. He hobbled over to help Hero by pulling at his legs. This did little to release the engineer, but it certainly released another string of invective. Hero was so far down the hatch that Giorgio could only reach just past his knees. "Sorry," he said. "Hang on." Kneeling over the hatch, he managed to straighten Hero's legs, pulling them to his chest. Adjusting the angle so that he could apply his strength, he tugged again. Sounds of annoyance found their way around the stuck form of the chief. Giorgio apologized once more and tried again, this time pushing Hero down further into the hatch. Sounds of alarm found their way around the stuck form of the chief. "What can I do?" Giorgio called down the shaft.
Off.
There's no need to be like that.
No.
Que cosa?
No.
Pull now?
Yes.
Oh, Giorgio chuckled. I could have sworn you said... Sorry, yes, of course. Giorgio obliged, and a red-faced, ruffled chief popped out of the bottleneck like a bad vintage.
Thanks for hurrying,
he griped, after rubbing his chest and taking a few breaths.
What happened?
You fell down the...
To the ship.
Oh, it lurched, replied Giorgio, checking readouts. Uh-oh, I think we're sinking. Hero looked thoughtfully at his younger colleague. He said.
In that case, I'd better call the captain.
Why, I'm sure he would have felt it.
In case the bridge crew get any crazy ideas about blasting us out of here. With our landing struts and belly sucked into the mud, it could rip us apart.
Could we blast our way out of here? Asked Baines. Douglas and Singh looked at one another and both shrugged, unsure how to answer, when the comm binged. Bridge, Singh answered.
Sandeep, it's Hero.
Go ahead, Hero. The captain and the commander are here also.
Are we sinking?
Yes.
Are you thinking about blasting us out of here?
The three bridge officers exchanged glances. Of course not, Singh lied shamelessly.
Good. Don't. It could rip us apart, said the chief, brooking no argument. At what rate are we sinking?
We've capsized more than actually sunk, Singh reported. We're about a metre lower to starboard and about a metre up to port. Unfortunately, the main cargo and vehicle access is on the starboard side, so we'll have to dig our way out before any vehicles will be able to leave the pod. That's after the flooding's gone down, of course.
We're flooding?
Asked Hero, fearing even worse news. No, all hatches well and truly battened, I'm glad to report. Now, obviously, we can't blast our way out of here. Singh raised a wry eyebrow to his colleagues once more. So how are we to right the ship?
Well, firstly, I suggest we don't try to move her in the middle of a hurricane. Secondly, if we build a support structure to hold a quarter of the ship, we can retract the landing struts one at a time. Then, using the heavy diggers, we excavate underneath each strut and build a rubble concrete pile. When it's cured, we lower the strut just enough to take the weight and repeat for the other three struts. When all four struts have a foundation, we can lift Sekai and lock her off at whatever level we need to, up to the full height of the landing gear should we need to protect her.
The bridge officers nodded to one another, impressed.
That's brilliant, Hero,
said Douglas. Did you just come up with that off the hoof?
No, sir. I put the plan together when we landed, but building the enclosure took priority, as there were concerns about missing the crop planting season.
I see. I take it there's not a lot we can do about the situation right now, then? Asked Douglas.
No, sir, replied the engineer. Not unless it's the absolute last resort before the end. If it became an emergency, we could uncouple the ship from the pod and attempt the liftoff without the payload. I suppose we could then reattach using the grapplers and pull the pod back into position from the air. But that would be really risky, sir. Suicidal in this weather.
Understood. So what, then? We just keep sinking? Asked Douglas, looking around for ideas.
We must wait for the weather to change, and hope we don't capsize past the point where my plan can work, sir.
Hero answered.
I did argue with Doctors Naris, Patel, and Portree at the time that, although the earthworks are very important, I believe building a foundation for the ship to sit upon is just as important, sir. In the event of extreme weather, for example, where floods might destabilize the ground.
Hero didn't finish his sentence with an exclamation mark, but they all heard it. Well, as it turns out, Hero, you were absolutely right. Douglas flashed a pained look towards his fellow bridge officers. I think we're all agreed here that your plan should be the very first thing we do once this situation has blown over. Now, can you put your brilliant mind to work on another problem for us, please?
What's that, sir?
The chief asked, completely immune to flattery. We have 14 terrified people out there in all this, so how the hell can we get them back without smashing the shuttle into the ground?
I'll think on it, sir. Engineering, out.
The comm fell silent.
That's us told, then, said Baines.
The wind ripped at the trees, constantly peppering the people hanging onto them with organic missiles. The exposed team, already terrified, were now freezing too, each wondering how long their death grip on the tree trunks could be maintained. Their equipment and finds flew either into the forest or over the edge of the tree-strewn cliff to the river below. They watched them go, powerless to do anything else. Their tables were long gone. All that remained was a small case, bobbing, still earthbound against all the odds. Eventually, the battle was lost, and it too flew off into the unknown with just about everything else.
No!
Shouted Beckett. What's the matter, mate? The Australian construction worker called over the howl of the wind.
All my sandwiches were in there, and my tea flask,
wailed Beckett. The Australian laughed, despite everything. Beckett looked bereft as he hung on for dear life. There must be something we can do, snapped Douglas angrily. What's the wind speed now? No change, sir, Singh provided. According to the ship's scanners, it appears the eye of the storm is about an hour from us. Looks like it will pass through here, unless it changes course in the meantime.
Can we use that? Asked Baines. How big is it?
About 20 miles in diameter, replied Singh, turning to face them. This is a big storm. So it will be clear skies for about, Douglas calculated for a second, 8 minutes? In theory, sir, Singh replied. But what could we do in that time? We could get the shuttle launched and get to them, certainly, but there's no way we could get them all aboard and make it back here, even if we left all their equipment behind. We'd be smashed to pieces trying to dock with the New World upon our return. If we put down on the plain, we might weather the storm, as long as we don't float off down the river. It's a lake out there now, and one flying tree could destroy the shuttle. The three officers fell silent again, racking their brains for a rescue plan. Well, could we no get to them overland? Asked Douglas, exasperated.
Even in fine weather, that would be an 8-hour route march, Captain, said Baines. Each way. And then, what could you do even if you found them? You'd just be another team lost out in that. She pointed at the ferocious storm through the viewports. Of course, that's if you managed to avoid drowning in the floods. What if we chanced getting a vehicle out? The captain tried again, willing to consider anything at this stage. The ground rises away from here towards Fossil Rock, and those big all-wheel drive trucks we have should be able to wade a meter, surely. We could always pump the water out of the airlock. Hey, Baines interrupted. We've already got a vehicle out there, a 32-tonner with 8-wheel drive, no less.
Douglas snapped his fingers. Of course, he exclaimed. The lorry you abandoned in the storm.
Hey,
Baines repeated plaintively. All we need to do is reach it, continued Douglas, oblivious. And if it's got a partial load of water on the back, so much the better for weight. Grasping for any solution, his mind worked quickly now. Perhaps we could lower ourselves down from a high-level hatch. Baines shook her head, the excitement ebbing quickly as her second thoughts trounced the captain's plan.
Captain, whoever goes out there will be blown all over the place and smashed against the ship in these winds.
I'm willing to risk it. Douglas slapped his right fist into his left palm with determination.
But then what? Baines asked in disbelief. They're 30 miles away. All right, 20 as the pterodactyl flies. But by the time you've travelled a couple of miles at best, the hurricane will be on you again.
True, admitted Douglas. But when it catches us, we'll have more chance in a huge truck like that than on foot. They can travel home in the back once we've ditched the water. When we flew to Fossil Rock the first time, we followed a game trail that wended its way through the forests between the plains. It took us most of the way there. It would be slow, but I believe that beastie outside could make it.
Captain, said Baines, trying to calm the situation,
That game trail may not even be there anymore. These winds could have filled any trails or tracks with dead trees by now, for all we know. I've got to try, Jill, Douglas replied, distress evident in his voice. I sent those people out there for a completely non-essential purpose. I can't just abandon them to their fate. You weren't to know the storm was coming in, James, Baines argued, her face colouring as she grew more nervous of what the captain's guilt might force him to try. No one could. Singh interrupted mildly. There's also the matter of the gates. What? The gates, he repeated patiently. They're shut and barred. The bars weigh a couple of tons each, I've been told. We can only move them with one of the diggers, remember? And we can't get the diggers out. Exactly. Thank you, Sandy. Placing her hope in reason, Baines hammered her point home. There's no way of getting that lorry out of there. The captain felt as though his colleagues were ganging up on him, and was now looking mutinous. No mean feat on his own ship. Doesn't the lorry have a crane? He inquired, jutting out his chin. Captain, Baines pleaded, you're talking about stepping out of a high-level hatch, abseiling down the hull of the ship, getting into the lorry, driving it across the compound if it will even move, getting out of the lorry in water and muck up to your waist, putting the crane legs out onto soft mud, operating the crane to swing a couple of large trees out of their hoops, dragging the gates open and driving away. And all that in 150-mile-an-hour winds? She took a deep breath. James, please. We all want to save those people, but if I'd suggested that, you'd lock me in the brig. You know you would. I mean, do you even know how to work a high ab? I'm near going to abandon those people, and I can't risk anyone else, Jill, said Douglas, getting stubbornly to his feet. I'm the captain. It's my duty to try anything which might save them. Anything. No matter how long the odds. Yes, you're the captain, Baines restated, also rising and laying a placating hand on his shoulder. That's exactly why we can't afford to lose you. As much as we want to save them, James, we need our captain too. So, what do you suggest I do? Asked Douglas wretchedly. I suggest that we need to calm down and think about this logically. Maybe we could... Singh coughed politely, interrupting them. Excuse me, but I think I have a solution. Hopefully one we can all survive. Douglas and Baines turned to the pilot. Spit it out, laddie, Douglas barked impatiently. Singh flashed them his perfect white grin. We use the shuttle. Has something changed and I've missed it? Asked Baines wearily. We use the space shuttle, Singh clarified and tried again. We prep for a rescue mission and wait in the shuttle bay for our window in the storm. Once the eye is over, we zoom out towards Fossil Rock and retrieve the dig crew. But... Baines couldn't help but notice the obvious flaw in the plan. You won't get back in time to dock with the ship before the hurricane. Aha! Sandeep cut her off to reveal his trick. We don't try and beat the storm back. But as we've already said, setting down outside might lose us the shuttle too. Douglas joined in, not sure where his pilot was going with this. I mean, if it's a choice between keeping the shuttle safe and those people's lives, then of course... We won't set down, Sandeep cut across him triumphantly. We shoot straight up through the eye. The shuttle can easily get above the storm to wait it out. I suggest heading for space. We don't know how long the storm might cover us here, and once in a geosynchronous orbit, we'll use very little fuel. Not to mention that it would be much safer than landing elsewhere, what with giant ferocious dinosaurs all over the place. No, we just wait up there, in perfect tranquility, for the battering down here to blow itself out. Then we just pop home. Simple. A moment's silence. Okay, so that's brilliant. When do we get started? Asked Baines. Douglas moved to stand behind Singh, giving him a pat on the shoulder. That's very good thinking, Sandy. It could be the chance we've been hoping for. Well done. It'll be damned dangerous, though. He leaned over to view the pilot's instruments. Right, whilst we've been discussing our options, he continued diplomatically, we've lost a quarter of an hour or more. Is the eye of the storm still heading for us, about 40 minutes out? As far as I can tell, sir, Singh acknowledged. Obviously, before the storm hit, we were only expecting a short hop, so we'll need to refuel the shuttle and give her a full check-over before we try something like this."
Douglas nodded.
"We'd better be about it then."
Singh stood, and they walked towards the door, discussing their preparations. "Captain? Sandy? Aren't you forgetting something?" asked Baines. They turned, waiting for her to elaborate. "Your prep of the shuttle is vital, of course, but how long do you think you'll be up there?" she asked.
"Not really sure," replied Singh.
"What's your point?" asked Douglas. "Well, if you're up there for a day or two, you might need a sandwich or two, perhaps. And let's not forget those poor wretches out there are going to be freezing as well as starving, and that's assuming you find them in one piece. You're going to need food, blankets, dry clothes, and a doctor."
"Well, of course we'll need those. That's why you're such an exemplary first officer, Jill. You allow me to keep my eye on the big picture, you can."
Douglas created a frame with his hands, grinning at her through it. "Right," she replied. "Well, you two go and set up your easels, and I'll stick to joining the dots." Douglas gave her his most charming smile, the one that sank her every time, before tossing a casual salute as they turned to leave. "Captain," she called them back, "don't get banged up. We're all out of shuttle paint."
"Mind the shop, Commander,"
he countered with a wink. Baines watched them go with concern, muttering, "Please be careful, James."
Dinosaur, written by Stephen Llewelyn and performed by Chris Barrie. New installments uploaded each week. Subscribe for more. Visit the link in the description for free New World companion stories, available for download as ebooks.